3 shocking hidden camera horror stories that haunt you at midnight forever. In the dead of night, when shadows stretch longer than reality, 3 hidden camera horror stories flicker to life, each more unnerving than the last. Out there, in the dark, the unexpected waits to unleash its terror. The kind that sends chills down your spine and keeps you awake, heart racing under the suffocating weight of fear. What secrets lie hidden behind closed doors? What unsuspecting victims have unknowingly starred in a chilling performance, oblivious to the fate that awaited them? It's a roller coaster of dread that never quite lets you off. Imagine this. A young couple decides to document their new home, excited for their fresh start. But as they sift through their unboxing chaos, a shadow darts across their living room, just on the edge of the camera's view. Brief, but unmistakable. Could it have been a figment of their imagination? Yet, night after night, the shadows grow bolder, as if they're carefully plotting their next move. The couple, no longer just a couple, becomes prisoners in their own home. They laugh it off, trying to convince themselves it's just stress. There's a tension in the air thicker than fog. Then there's the mystery of the abandoned cabin in the woods, once a retreat and now shrouded in whispers of misfortune. 3 friends dare to record their weekend escape, unaware of the sinister entity that lurks among the thick, gnarled trees. Their camera captures ghostly glimpses, impressions of figures that shouldn't be there, sounds of footsteps echoing when no one else is around. It's one thing to look into the camera. It's quite another to face the darkness that watches back. Fear escalates into panic, their laughter dissolving into screams as the trees seem to close in. And what about the night owl, the late-night streamer captured in a video gone viral? Her laughter is infectious, a bright light in the shadowed corners of her small apartment, until one fateful night. The camera catches something moving behind her. A hush falls over the chat as viewers begin to realize there's something sinister slipping in through the cracks. Her cheerful demeanor fades into confusion, and then abject terror as she turns. But the feed cuts out, leaving thousands clinging to their screens in helpless dread. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. But there's a secret woven into each story, a terrifying knot waiting to be untied. Could these apparitions be simply figments conjured by fatigue? Or are they the manifestations of something darker, waiting for the moment to trap their next unsuspecting victim? Now the question looms, what happens when the cameras stop rolling? What fate awaits those entrapped in their own stories? And what sights will unfold when the clock strikes midnight once again? The clock ticked relentlessly, each second echoing through the stillness of the couple's home. Jess and Mike were too exhausted to laugh anymore. Night after night, the looming shadows transformed their once welcoming haven into a fortress of dread. They checked every corner, every closet, and each creak in their floorboards seemed to pulse with a life of its own. "We need to stop this," Mike whispered one evening, eyes darting to the darkened hallway. "What if it's nothing?" Jess tried to sound brave, but her voice trembled. They both knew differently, an unspoken agreement hanging in the air. They could sense the creeping malice, thick as smoke, wrapping around their throats like a noose. In another world, their last getaway, the 3 friends at the cabin had made a reckless pact to document their thrill. Laughter echoed in the cold woods as they shared old stories and ghost tales, innocently inviting whatever dark forces lingered nearby. The first night, their laughter was met with strange rustles beyond the trees. Just a raccoon, they decided, nothing to fear. But then, as night fell deeper, Michael caught a flicker of movement in the camera's tiny screen. He glanced around nervously, trying to convince himself it was just his imagination. Yet, with every pause of laughter, the air thickened, the energy shifted. "Did you hear that?" Tina's voice quaked as her eyes, wide with terror, locked onto Mike's. The camera kept rolling. Their joyful faces turned to masks of horror as a figure emerged behind the trees, an indistinct shape, just blurred enough to avoid being fully seen, yet utterly clear in intent. Screams erupted as they scrambled back, the camera capturing a frenzy of terrified movements. And then, darkness. It abruptly cut to stillness, leaving only a flickering red light. As the stream ended abruptly for the late-night streamer, she didn't comprehend her audience was already screaming at their screens. A chilling realization had sunk in among her viewers. An entity lurked just beyond the flow of her cheerful, lively chatter. When she spun to look behind her, all they saw was the blur of her panic, the way her breath quickened, heart pounding like a drum, as the familiar warmth of her home morphed into a cavern of confinement. All of it blended into one reality, each story filled with despair lurking just below the surface. But every hidden truth came down to a singular moment: discovery. The thought consumed her, panicking her into a blind flight toward the door. Closing the feed felt futile. The terror crept closer each second. What if they weren't alone? What if the very essence of what they feared was an entity that could slip through walls, through cameras, and into the pulse of their lives? Jessica sat trembling on the kitchen floor as she clutched her phone tightly. Staring at the streaming feed on her screen, it flickered and wavered ominously. She felt the overwhelming urge to shut her eyes, afraid of what the reality could reveal. All at once, a sound, a scratch, not outside, but inside, deep in the shadows of their home. "Mike!" she cried out, breath hitching. Then, darkness enveloped everything. The screen glitched once more, the last frame capturing two horrified faces illuminated by a wavering light, with an ominous presence enveloping them, ready to swallow them whole. Was this the end, or merely the start of something far worse? As silence fell, one question lingered in the air. What happens when the darkness comes for them? Don't miss what lies ahead when the truth is staring right back at you, a truth that could unravel everything. The silence felt suffocating, a thick weight pressing down on Jess and Mike as the darkness consumed their home. Jess's heart raced, throbbing against her chest like a wild drum, drowning out every rational thought. She squinted into the void, her breath shallow and panicked. Moments stretched endlessly. The only sounds were her own quickened heartbeats echoing in her ears. "Mike," she whimpered again, her voice barely a whisper, trembling with fear. Suddenly, a soft rustle punctured the oppressive quiet, emanating from the living room. It was a sound so innocent, yet became a spear of dread piercing through their fragile composure. The noise flickered and danced around the edges of the house, an unseen playmate taunting them from the shadows. Mike felt the chill creep up his spine. He dared to take a step toward the hall. "Stay here," he mouthed, but with no certainty of voice. He craved the comfort of her presence. Together, they faced the unknown, but alone? Too vulnerable. As he reached the entrance, a familiar jingle rang out, a distinct sound that made his stomach drop. The cat. Where had she gone? The little beast was always close by, a quiet guardian, but now she felt like a lost soul, a final tether in their crumbling reality. "Jess, I think it's Molly," he shouted, spinning back towards his wife. But she was already on her feet, eyes wide and glistening with horror. Jess hurried after him, steeling herself against the tremors coursing through her body. Each step echoed down the empty corridor, and the hallway lights flickered, casting elongated shadows that twisted and writhed as if they had a will of their own. Their once peaceful home was now hell-bent on betraying them, as if fibers of its very structure leaked the horror they'd unknowingly invited in. Suddenly, the sound intensified, a soft scuffle followed by a purring vibration that seemed to crawl under their skin. Jess cringed, recognizing it was combined with a low, unsettling growl that didn't belong to any creature she knew. "Mike, what is that?" Before he could answer, darkness swelled, daring to swallow them whole. In that instant, the lights flickered one more time, fading then exploding back to life, revealing shadows dancing against the walls. Jess froze. In the corner of the room, where the light barely reached, there was a figure. It stood just at the edge of their vision, almost hidden, yet its presence sent electric shocks through their bodies. It felt like staring into the dark heart of a storm, something alive, pulsing with an ancient dread. Jess's breath caught, a lump rising in her throat. "Get out!" she shrieked, gripping Mike's arm, her voice raw with urgency. They turned to flee, hearts racing, But something else had begun to stir in the room. The very air shifted, thickening as if it were choking. The temperature dropped sharply, and the shadows elongated into claws, reaching for them in a desperate move. Jess yanked Mike towards the kitchen, eyes wide with terror. They had to find a way out, something to protect themselves from whatever it was that watched, waited, and thrived on their fear. She reached for her phone again, praying for the light to guide them, but the screen flickered weakly, strangled by the thickening darkness. There has to be something, Mike panted, rifling through the drawers. A sudden crash reverberated through the house, as if the very world was fracturing around them. Jessica's blood ran cold. "It's all coming apart," she yelled, and just then, a piercing scream, a voice they knew too intimately, echoed from the depths of the house. "Tina! Mike! We have to go back. We have to help her!" Jess screamed, her thoughts racing. But there was a more urgent question hanging in the air. Did they dare face whatever lurked beyond the shadows? Or flee into the abyss where unknown horrors awaited? As the scream faded into the dark, only one thought consumed their minds. Has the darkness already claimed them? The moment of truth was coming. Would they uncover the horror, or become part of it? What awaits on the other side of their reckoning could shatter everything they thought they knew. Jess's breath quickened as she and Mike exchanged desperate glances. Time felt unreal, each heartbeat pounding in the silence like a countdown. "We can't just leave her," Mike insisted, the fear in his voice sharpened by determination. The kitchen lay before them, now shrouded in eerie shadows. Jess felt a wave of cold air wash over her, as if the house itself were exhaling a gust of despair. "Fine, but stay close," she whispered, clutching his hand tightly. They crept back toward the living room, hearts hammering. The scream echoed in her mind, a ghostly marionette pulling on strands of panic. As they moved, soft footfalls broke the silence behind them, a continuous thrum that neither could ignore. "Did you hear that?" Jess asked, her voice trembling as they edged closer to the darkened hallway, every instinct screaming for them to run. "I heard it," Mike replied through gritted teeth, his eyes darting around the dim space, catching nothing but shadows, but feeling something lurking just at the edge of sight. The hallway appeared longer than it had moments before, stretching taut with tension, twisting into a hollow of dread. As they stepped inside, the walls seemed to pulse around them. Then, the piercing scream sliced through the air again, Tina's voice closer this time, pleading, agonizing. "Over there." Mike pointed toward a sliver of light emanating from a slightly ajar door at the end of the corridor. The door trembled as if something or someone on the other side pushed against it, desperate to escape. Jess's throat was dry. She fought the urge to scream, to run away, but Tina needed them. "On three," Mike whispered. "1, 2, 3. They burst through the door, hearts in their throats, believing they could break whatever spell bound them. What they found was sewed from their darkest dreams, a room that looked like an untouched sanctuary, yet twisted into chaos. Pictures of their family lined the walls, faces eerily smiling back at them. But Tina wasn't here. "No, no, no," Jess chanted softly, stepping inside. The floor felt sticky underfoot, as if drenched in something invisible but palpable. A chill seized her, dread coiled in her stomach. "Where is she?" "Jess, wait," Mike hissed, bringing her back to reality. He caught her wrist, eyes widening as he scanned the room. Before either could make sense of the scene, the air thickened, and the shadows from the corners of the room seemed to pull inward as if the darkness was cocooning something within. Then, the closet door slammed open. A figure dashed out, a blurred shape sprinting past them like a ghost. "Tina!" Jess yelled, lunging forward. But then a shattering crash jolted them. The door they had just entered slammed shut, sealing them inside. Panic surged as Jess banged on the door, the sound echoing in the small room. "Let us out," she screamed, her voice breaking, desperation clawing at her chest. "Back away," Mike practically shouted, gripping the handle. When he turned it, it wouldn't budge, stuck fast. Jess felt the darkness thicken around them, the air growing hotter yet more suffocating. The room resonated with a low growl, vibrating through her bones. "What is happening?" She was barely above a whisper. Something is here with us." Mike's gaze darted toward the shapes pooling in the room, growing and swirling. And then, Right before their eyes, a figure coalesced in the center, a twisted version of Tina with hollow eyes and a contorted smile, her voice mixing with the shadows. "Help me run," Jess screamed, dragging Mike toward the window, forgetting they were trapped. But what could they do against it? As they collided with the wall of shadows, laughter echoed throughout, thick with malevolence. It was laughter filled with the weight of countless broken dreams, and they could feel it wrapping tighter around them. Jess turned back to see the distorted face of Tina, grinning now, dark joy blooming in her eyes like a flower under a dying sun. "Jess! Mike! Help!" The voice echoed, now mocking. The darkness enveloped them, dragging them into a void of despair. Tears stung Jess's eyes as she grasped Mike's hand, fighting against the unyielding grasp of fear. But in that moment, they both realized the horror wasn't just outside in the world. It had seeped in, twisting everything they thought they knew about family, about love. Would they break free from the shadows gripping their reality, or would they be swallowed by the nightmare creeping closer? With only a heartbeat left to decide, terror tightened its grip, leading them deeper into their reckoning. The walls of the room began to breathe, expanding and collapsing with every pulse of their fear. Jess felt the heat rise, oppressive and thick, as shadows writhed like serpents around them. The distorted figure of Tina grinned wider, her laughter ringing in their ears, wrapping around them like chains, binding them to despair. "Where is she, Tina?" Jess shouted, her voice trembling but fierce, demanding answers from a nightmare. "What have you done to her? Help me, help us." The twisted mimicry of Tina's voice echoed back, each syllable dripping with venom, feeding the shadows that licked at the edges of their sanity. That Mike's grasp tightened on Jess's hand, desperation and courage mixed. "This isn't Tina. Whatever that is, it's using her." And just as he spoke, the air surged with a force as if in response to his words, shaking Jess to her core. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. The walls, once alive with invisible menace, stopped their pulsing, and silence cloaked the room like a heavy shroud. It felt as though they had crossed a threshold, a new level of horror had been summoned. A sickening quiet descended, broken only by the slow click of claws scratching against the wood beneath them, searching, seeking. "What do you think it wants?" Jess breathed, now almost too scared to move, her eyes glued to the face of the grotesque echo of her sister. "I don't know, but we can't give up," Mike replied, swallowing hard. "We can't let this darkness claim us. We need to find her." The shadows around them deepened, lengthening as if the room itself were trying to swallow them whole. "Help me," it repeated, the voice warped and slack with malice, yet laced with faint traces of the Tina they loved. Jess fought back the tears they threatened to shed. She couldn't break down now. They turned back towards the closet, where the flickering shadows danced. Was there an escape? Jess's heart raced. Rushing forward, she yanked open the door. Inside was a whirlwind of darkness, pulling at her, as if the very essence of dread coiled and waited. "Stay together," Mike warned as shadows bulged from the walls, breaking their bounds to slither toward them. Just beyond the doorway, something stirred, and Jess instinctively recoiled, but it was too late. She felt the cold tendrils wrap around her ankle, pulling her down. "Let go," she screamed, lunging toward Mike, her heart pounding as loud as thunder in her ears. He grabbed her arm, but the force was relentless, dragging her toward the abyss. With sheer will, Jess dug her fingernails into the ground, as if she could claw back her freedom. "We have to fight it," she gasped. Mike nodded, and together they pushed against the encroaching terror, both of them straining against the grip of darkness. "Think, Jess. How do we save her?" Mike shouted, desperation elevating every word. "Remember the significance of family, of love." Jess screamed, urging the truth out. "It wants us to break apart. We have to stay together, even against it." In one desperate, synchronized effort, they broke free of the clutching shadows. Jess leaned into Mike, forcing her eyes to meet his, and for a moment, they could feel their bond shimmer with light, a fragile beacon amidst the consuming darkness. "Will you accept our love?" Mike shouted into the shadowy void, and with that, Jess joined in, her voice intertwining with his. "We refuse to give you our pain. We choose hope." The distortions shrieked, furious with their defiance, the twisted copy of Tina's face contorting, revealing the nightmare behind. But Jess and Mike held on, fear giving way to unity and strength. As the shadowy tendrils retreated, revealing glimpses of light creeping back in, a sudden crash erupted behind them. Startled, they turned to see the closet door slammed shut once more, as if sealing away whatever still lurked. "Did we win?" Jess whispered, her heart racing, pulse pounding in her ears. The room was still dark, yet the oppressive weight began to lift just for a moment. But that moment shattered like glass, as a new sound filled the silence. From a crack in the closet door, a low growl emanated, dark and guttural, crawling with malevolence. "We need to get out now," Mike urged, yanking on the door handle desperately. The door rattled against something inside, but it wouldn't budge. The shadows thickened again, tightening around them. "Help me," the mocking voice echoed back, joining the chorus of eerie giggles that flooded the room. Fear seeped back in, consuming Jess's bravado as a new reality loomed closer. What if the worst was still yet to come? As the growls deepened, shadows coiling like vipers in the corners, Jess felt the dread swell once more. How far would they have to go to save Tina now? And what new horrors awaited them just beyond the threshold? The question echoed through her mind as the laughter shrieked louder, a cacophony of darkness, begging to be set free. The clock had run out. Neither the shadows nor the heartbeats would wait any longer. What if the darkness itself was only the beginning? The growl from the closet escalated, a deep reverberation that rattled through Jess's bones. The shadows compelled her to flee, yet a primal instinct urged her to stand firm. Mike's grasp was tight around her wrist, urgency fueling his determination. "Jess, on three," he whispered, panic threading through his voice. "1, 2, wait." Jess interjected, her heart hammering against her ribcage. The growls morphed into an unsettling cacophony, weaving through the air like a deadly song. "What if we're not alone?" They peered closer at the closet door, the wooden frame vibrating with an unseen force. To their horror, a slim gap opened, a glimpse into the abyss that had been tucked away inside. A flash of something white and luminous darted past, but it was gone before Jess could comprehend it. Suddenly, the shape of a hand emerged from the crack, fingers elongated and unnaturally thin, nails sharp as daggers. Jess recoiled, a scream clawing at her throat, but she couldn't abandon Mike. Couldn't let fear dictate their next move. "It's trying to trick us," she uttered, dread pooling within her. "We have to focus to save Tina. Right? That's it. If it wants us apart, we need to stick together even more," Mike shouted, his voice strong but his eyes betraying a flicker of panic. Just then, a deafening crash echoed through the room, the closet door shattering under an unseen attack. They stumbled back, hearts racing, eyes glued to the opening as a creature stepped forth, shadow cloaked and hunched over. It was a twisting mass of darkness, malice draping over it like a heavy cloak. A sudden flash of horrid familiarity pierced Jess's mind. The figure bore a grotesque resemblance to Tina, but the eyes those couldn't belonged to her sister. They were voids of despair and hatred. "Help me," the creature echoed eerily, entwining the original sense of Tina's voice with a chilling growl, almost pleading but dripping with contempt. "No, this isn't her," Mike shouted, putting himself in front of Jess, unwavering. "It's just using her voice. We have to fight this." Jess felt the fragments of their past with Tina flood her thoughts, those warm afternoons in the park, laughter echoing under the sun. An idea sparked within her, shaky but resolute. "Mike, sing that song we used to sing together. The one that made Tina smile." "What in this hell?" he retorted, doubt creeping into his tone. But Jess locked eyes with him, determination flooding her chest. "Trust me," she insisted. "Okay," he relented, the fear softening into a flicker of hope. They began to harmonize softly, the melody weaving through the dark air. The haunting growl faltered, hesitation pulsing through the darkness. With every note, Jess felt a rush of warmth envelop them, a light piercing through the oppressive shadow. The twisted form faltered, its figure shifting uneasily as if caught in a storm. "Stop! Don't!" it shrieked, real anger igniting its voice. But Jess and Mike pressed on, their voices rising. The shadow writhed, the echoes of laughter and cries swirling around them, colliding violently with the song that had once bound them together. Light flickered, illuminating their surroundings and erasing the darkness inch by inch. Then, from the center of the chaos, a scream of pain surged out, a sound so heart-wrenching. Jess clutched her chest, her breath hitching. "We're losing her," she cried, conviction mingling with terror. "No, we can't give in," Mike bellowed, his voice spilling across the chaos like a wildfire. They continued to sing, the room trembling as the very foundations shook. But just as Jess thought they might succeed, the ground quaked violently beneath them, a deep rumble that trailed through the air. An unseen force swept in, slamming them to the ground. "Help me." The voice again, the real one. Tina was there, lost beneath the shadows. Jess's heart shattered with the realization. Then emerged an unnerving revelation. What if the entity feasting on their fears had already claimed too much? Was there a way back from this horror? Or had they awakened something more dangerous than they could ever imagine? With shadows clawing around them and the unbearable weight of grief threatening to crush Jess, the thought fluttered into her mind, could they truly save Tina? Or would they lose themselves in this abyss? Their fate hung in the balance as the struggle escalated, and with one final push, they screamed into the void, "We won, give up." But everything slipped with a deafening crash as darkness surged, swallowing their cries whole. What awaited them in the heart of that shadow? This was only the beginning. The darkness clamped down like a vice, squeezing the breath from Jess's lungs. Tumbling backward, she collided with the icy floor, feeling the chills seep into her bones. Mike sprawled beside her, his eyes wide and panicked as the shadow loomed ever closer, a swirling mass of desperation and fury. "Get up," he shouted, his voice strained, barely carrying over the low growl that reverberated through the room. Jess's heart raced. Every second felt like an eternity as the shadowy figure shifted, looming with malevolence. "Mike, the song," Jess gasped, scrambling to her feet. The flickers of light they had conjured were dimming, threatening to snuff out completely. "Right. Together," he urged, grasping her hand tight as they rose. "How can we fight this?" Jess's voice trembled as the creature recoiled slightly at the sound of their connection. "It's not just darkness. It's our fears, lives, everything we've lost." Then, in the recesses of her mind, the memories poured forth, not just of Tina, but of those times when laughter and love illuminated even the darkest corners. Jess squeezed her eyes shut, drawing strength from their shared past. "Let us go," Mike shouted again, pulling her into an embrace, and together they began to sing. The melody crooned softly, trembling but resolute, dancing around them like a fragile thread holding the world together. As they sang, tendrils of light broke through tiny bursts glimmering like stars. The shadow twisted violently at their song, shrieks piercing the air, a sound that seemed to split Jess's heart in two. Not yet. They had to hold on. "Help me, please," echoed Tina's voice, now layered with a tense urgency that sent ice down Jess's spine. It was an invitation, a trick meant to lure them back into the void. "No, it's lying," Jess screamed, pushing through the doubt. They needed to focus. "Remember her, Mike. What she loved. We can break the spell." As they reached the crescendo, the shadow shrank, pulsing violently against the pressure of their voices, and Jess felt a surge of warmth flow between her and Mike, an invincible bond, holding back the darkness. But before they could finish the song, a horrific roar erupted from the creature, a sound so raw and discordant it felt like knives slashing through the fabric of reality. "You will not take her," it screamed, and all light flickered in response, shadows rushing back like angry waters. Jess's chest tightened, her breath hitching again. They were losing ground. The shadows were greedy, consuming the warmth of their light. Then, above the cacophony, a new sound emerged, laughter. High and bright, a sound that was achingly familiar. It danced through the chaos like a beacon. Jess froze, eyes widening as she realized it was coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. It was Tina. "Jess. Mike. I'm here." The laughter ebbed, drawing near but fading in and out like a ghost. The shadow shrieked again, curling in upon itself as if strangled by anguish, the dark edges quivering around their resolve. "Hold on," Mike cried, his face pale but determined. Jess could feel the uncertainty at the edges of his strength. They needed to shift the tide. "Come on, Tina. We're fighting for you," Jess yelled, and the shadows recoiled, as if they were afraid. The shadows rippled, but then, in a flash, they lunged forward, propelling them back to the floor, a forceful shove that knocked the breath out of her. But amid the chaos, Jess noticed something: not just darkness swirling, but forms struggling within it. "We can see you. You're not gone. We want to let you go," Jess yelled, the words spilling out of her like a prayer. The laughter grew louder, binding them, lifting the weight of despair. Yet an unseen rush turned, a betrayal within the night. Without warning, a flash of blinding white surged from the closet, surging outwards toward Jess and Mike, swallowing the shadows in a cascade. In that moment, the connection with Tina intensified, knocking Jess off her feet, the warmth filling her with unfamiliar power. But just as suddenly, the glow dimmed, and darkness swelled again with a surge. "You cannot hold me back," the entity screamed, erasing the remnants of their bond. And there, in the debris of desperation, Jess felt the ground pull away beneath her, an abyss yawning wide, a singular voice echoing in the pit of her soul, promising freedom and despair. "Are you ready for the final choice?" With a split second to decide, Jess and Mike locked eyes, determination treasuring the last flickering ember of hope. One choice remained. But what if the shadows had already claimed Tina completely? As the darkness clawed toward them once more, Jess's heart raced. Would she save her sister and lose everything, or let go in order to fight another day? The air tensed. Choices had consequences, and as the shadows surged, the final showdown escalated. What lay ahead remained shrouded in the sinister shadows, waiting to be uncovered. The darkness surged, a living thing, pressing down on Jess and Mike. Their breaths quickened, desperation clawing at their throats, and the shadowy figure twisted violently before them like a storm about to unleash its fury. "Jess!" Mike's voice trembled, barely audible above the oppressive growl. "We can't give in." "We need." His words were lost in a cacophony of howls and whispers, a cacophony that filled every corner of the room, drowning out their resolve. The fabric of reality felt thin, fragile, ready to snap under the weight of their fear. "Focus, Mike. Remember the song? Our memories, Tina," Jess shouted, anchoring herself against the tide of despair as she struggled to hold on to the connection that had felt so strong moments ago. An icy finger of the shadow brushed against her skin, sending a wave of terror through her. She shuddered, feeling every lost moment rush back, every smile erased too soon. "Don't let it pull us apart," she warned. Suddenly they were not just fighting an entity of darkness, but also against the specters of their own past, the regret, the guilt, the unbearable loss. Jess squeezed her eyes shut, summoning every light in her heart. "We want to forget you, Tina," she cried, finally breaking through the chaos with prayer-like determination. As if answering her plea, the shadow reeled, twisting wildly. A sharp crack erupted in the air like thunder, startling them both. For a fleeting moment, Jess felt a presence caress her cheek like a warm breeze before it was sucked back into the void of shadows. "Tina?" she whispered, hope mixing with dread. "Sing, Jess!" exclaimed Mike, gripping her hand tighter. His palms were slick with perspiration, but his passion ignited a fire within her. They had to push through together. With trembling voices, they began to sing again, an unsteady harmony that pierced through the din of anguish surrounding them. This time the notes felt heavier, richer, like a tapestry woven from their shared joys and sorrows. "Stay with me, Tina," Jess cried. "We're coming for you." Each phrase felt like a lifeline thrown into an abyss, but the shadows writhed in protest. Then came a terrifying silence, stifling and absolute. The absence of sound was louder than the song, swallowing every note, and Jess's heart raced. The darkness pulsed, shimmering like it was alive, as if anticipating their next move. "Look," Mike shouted, pointing toward the epicenter of the shadow. Something flickered in the depths, a glimmer of light. It was a small shape, fighting to surface, to break free. "Keep going. Don't stop." Jess willed her voice as the light drew nearer. The shape transformed and twisted, a frail figure that could only be her sister. But just as it seemed they could reach her, a wall of darkness slammed down, cruelly blocking their way. "No!" Jess screamed, panic welling up. The shadows tightened around them, squeezing harder. "Tina!" But as they fought through the darkness, A sinister whisper curled around them like smoke. "She's lost, just let go. You'll be free." The suggestion coiled into the very marrow of her bones, tempting Jess with the promise of release. Cold terror gripped her heart, a seed of doubt sprouted. What if they couldn't rescue Tina? What if everything they were feeling was hopeless? "Don't listen." Mike's voice cut through her storm of doubt. "We've come too far to turn back now." Jess felt the warmth of his hand echo through her, reminding her of their shared strength. Forcing her eyes back to the unfolding scene, she gasped. The shadows were pulling at the light, dragging it back into the abyss. Without thinking, she fought against the gravity of that darkness, step by step, dragging Mike along with her. Together. But just as they were about to break free, an ear-splitting roar erupted, a hideous scream that reverberated through their bones, sending icy tendrils of fear racing through Jess's veins. Suddenly, Mike staggered back, his face a mask of terror. "It's too much. Jess, I can't." Time stretched as Jess's heart sank. She could either save her sister or save him. The conflict howled within her. As the shadows pressed closer, their breath hot with resentment, urging her to choose. "Mike," she cried, her voice trembling. "Fight with me. We can't give up." As the chorus of doubt swirled around them, Jess stood at the crossroads of desperation, hold on to hope or lose everything. But what if the shadows were stronger than their bond? What if the choice is yours, will you prevail? Whispered the sinister voice, mocking her resolve. With the impending darkness drawing near, Jess knew they were running out of time. One decision lay before them. But would it be one she could live with? The shadows swelled, and in that fleeting moment, everything hung in the balance. The shadows loomed closer, a relentless tide of despair, and Jess's heart hammered in her chest. Time felt like molasses, stretching and sliding as she weighed her choices. In that moment, everything around her faded to a blur. It was just her, Mike, and the suffocating darkness. "Think, Jess, think," she urged herself. The image of Tina flickered in her mind, a beacon amidst the chaos. She couldn't abandon her sister, not now. But Mike's eyes reflected sheer panic, and she could sense the life draining from him. "Please let me go," Mike gasped, his voice breaking. "It's pulling me down, no, don't." In an instant, Jess lunged forward, anchoring Mike with both hands as she shouted against the darkness. "We are stronger together. Tina needs us." Their breaths mingled in the oppressive atmosphere, and Jess felt an inexplicable compulsion. Could their voices be the weapon they needed? As the shadows closed in, Jess looked deep into Mike's eyes, willing him to understand. "We can't lose anyone else, not again." They turned toward the growing light, the silhouette of Tina diminishing in a tempest of shadows. Jess steadied her breathing, searching for the fragile thread of hope tethering them all. "Let us sing," she urged. "One last time." Wordlessly, Mike nodded, dread and defiance swirling in his eyes. Together, they started again, their voices pitching up against the dark, a jagged cacophony slicing through despair. With every note, light shimmered, pushing against the creeping shadows. The ground trembled, and the walls around them shook as if the very structure of their reality was rebelling against the song. The oppressive whispers morphed into shrieks, a violent argument emerging from the depths. "Stop! You cannot prevail." Desperation surged within Jess, drowning out the fear. "We can, Tina. We're coming." The light shimmered closer, flickering like a candle caught in a gust. But with that sudden surge of hope came an overwhelming despair. The shadows shifted, swirling like a tempest, drawing Mike away. "No, don't!" Jess screamed. She reached for him, never letting go of his hand, but the darkness tightened its grip like iron shackles. As the roar crescendoed, everything felt like chaos. Pain lanced through Jess as she tried to pull Mike back. The sinister voice morphed again. "Give in to the darkness, it will be easier." For a heartbeat, Jess felt her resolve falter, her heart teetering on the edge of surrender. Would relinquishing Mike bring an end to the agony? But just then, the light pulsed brighter, flickering with a warmth that embraced her. "Not like this," she murmured, grounding herself in the memory of Tina, her sister's laughter piercing through the void. Whatever this darkness was, it would take more than fear to defeat them. "Mike, fight!" she cried, his face twisted in pain. But then something flickered within him, a spark of determination deep in his eyes. "I want to leave you." he yelled, fighting against the pull of despair. Together they sang louder, harder, as if their combined will could carve a path through the chaos. The room shimmered, the light igniting the darkness, washing it away like waves retreating from the shore. But just as the shadows began to peel back, a jolt of ice shot through Jess when she felt a sharp tug at her heart. A deep voice resonated. "You cannot escape the truth, she is not alone." The words sliced into her thoughts. Was the voice talking about Tina? What truth? Jess's pulse quickened. She couldn't lose Tina, not now. But desperation clawed at her heart, planting seeds of doubt. As they sang, the shadows retreated, revealing glimpses of their past, memories intermingling with promises of uncertainty. Jess's chest tightened with realization. What if they continued to fight, but yet failed to save her? The room went still again, the shadows recoiling to form a wall of swirling darkness, each manifestation echoing the voice's warning. The light flickered wildly, reflecting their struggle against the impending void that threatened to swallow them whole. "We have to choose," Mike screamed, fighting against the shadows, his words dissipating into the silence. Jess looked around frantically, every shadow whispering her fears, tightening the noose around her resolve. Choose what? The question hung heavy in the air, pulsing with uncertainty as the walls of darkness pulsed ominously, growing more substantial with each heartbeat. They could finish this together. But what lay at the end of the battle? Could they really pull Tina back from the depths? As she braced herself for the next move, Jess felt the tremors growing, the shadows shifting like restless spirits. The air felt thick, like they were on the precipice of something unimaginable. With a voice resolute and trembling, she faced the darkness once more, conviction bubbling within her. "Tell me, what do I need to do to save her?" And just as the shadows loomed ready to consume them in one fell swoop, a heavy silence fell, a prelude to unfathomable truths unraveling at their feet. What awaited them in this game of shadows? Would Jess's determination break the silence, or would it just push them deeper into the void? The darkness lingered, full of burdens yet to be confronted, and the next choice was just around the corner. The shadows pulsed around Jess and Mike, relentless and unforgiving. Jess could feel the weight of despair clawing at her throat as they prepared to face what had long ago consumed the essence of their lives. In one final surge of courage, Jess remembered the warmth of love, the laughter of family, Tina's smile illuminating rooms. "We share this burden, together," she whispered fiercely, grasping Mike's hand tightly. "Together," he echoed, determination shining through their shared fear. The air shimmered as they once again sang the emotive melody, pouring out like sunlight through cracks in a storm. With each note, the shadows writhed and recoiled, as if barbed by the warmth their words created. Jess could feel something shifted within the dark mass. It was vulnerable now, less of a beast and more of a fractured reflection. Their love didn't just fight against terror, it revealed it. Then suddenly, a piercing shriek echoed from the heart of the shadows. "You cannot keep me from her." The shadows coalesced, forming an eerily familiar shape that twisted and morphed. It had the outline of Tina, but cloaked in desolation, eyes hollow and filled with malice. "Jess, Mike, help me." Her voice trembled, a chilling mockery echoing around them. "No," Jess shouted, lunging forward, tears streaming down her cheeks. "This is not your sister. This is fear trying to trick us." The entity faltered momentarily, the twisted smile of the creature flickering. With renewed strength, Jess and Mike kept their voices strong, chanting encouragement to the essence of Tina they could sense beneath the monstrous exterior. "Remember who you are, Tina," they cried in unison. "We've come to take you home." As if responding to their call, the shadows swayed, pulsing with discordant energy. Then, as the song crescendoed, the barriers within began to crack, the entity moaning in frustration. Jess could see flickers of brightness deep within the twisted figure. "Fight, Tina!" Jess shouted into the fray. "We're with you." With each heartfelt note, light began to break through the darkness, streaks of brilliance slicing apart the gloom, illuminating their surroundings. Yet a chilling whisper wound through the chaos, drowning out their song. "You cannot save her. She is lost to the dark." Jess shook her head vehemently. "No, Tina is not lost." She felt the warmth of Mike beside her, grounding her resolve. We choose to believe, we choose love. In that moment of clarity, the air thickened and the shadow gave way, revealing a childlike semblance of Tina, tears rolling down her cheeks, hands reaching out. Please don't leave. Her voice was faint but sincere, a glimmer of hope beneath the choking dark. Hold on, Mike shouted, fighting against the shadows gripping his heart. We're coming. They surged forward, feeding off the flickering essence radiating from Tina's true self. With one last, defiant plea, Jess and Mike sang louder, allowing their voices to cascade like an unyielding wave, crashing against the barricades of despair. The shadows roared one last time, a cacophony more horrendous than any they had faced. Help me, pleaded Tina, and in a breathless moment, Jess locked eyes with that haunting mirror of her sister. We refuse to let you go. Just then, a blinding light erupted, consuming the shadows like moths drawn to flame. The horrific image of the dark entity howled, straining against the brightness, and as it began to dissolve, Jess felt the familiar warmth of Tina's spirit beckoning through the chaos. With a final grasp, the three of them connected their hands, and the entity shuddered violently, crumbling into a cloud of ash and swirling shadows. No, you cannot. The voice faded, swallowed by hope, until silence flooded the air. For a moment, everything hung still. The darkness evaporated like a forgotten nightmare, revealing a sunlit room filled with warmth and safety. Jess collapsed to her knees, breathless yet triumphant, while Mike pulled Tina into their embrace. Tina, Jess cried, squeezing her sister tightly. You're back. We did it. Tina's voice quivered, her tears mingling with smiles. I thought I was lost. Never again, Mike promised, the warmth of hope brighter than any shadow they defaced. Together, the trio stood, encircled in light, remnants of fear washed away by their resolute love. Laughter broke the tension, as they embraced this reality the darkness defeated, forever retreating from the strength of their bond. They knew the battle had been fierce, but the light of family would always ignite a path forward. And as Jess looked at Mike and Tina, she felt a soothing sense of closure, one journey ending, with flickers of a brighter parade ahead. The memories of fear faded, replaced with the unbreakable spirit they had forged in fire, stronger together than apart. The light around them shimmered as hope intertwined with the fabric of their reality. And yet, whispers lingered in the air. Shadows may always creep at the edges of night, but love, truest love, would be their armor against the darkness forevermore. Now, with this story wrapping, it's time for you to join this journey and not miss a beat. You need to subscribe now, so you don't miss the next exclusive tales waiting around the corner. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and keep the stories alive. Don't you dare forget to flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this epic ending. And finally, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.